Hello and welcome to this evening's event, Tools for Success, How to Love the College Journey. We are thrilled that you are joining us tonight, and although of course we wish we were on campus at Bear Creek, we are very excited for the opportunity to have this virtual fellowship of learning together. As a Bear Creek alumni and a member of the admissions office, I have seen firsthand the way that Bear Creek helps guide students to live lives of wisdom, compassion, and courage, and to really work in partnership with students and parents as they launch to the next step after graduation from Bear Creek. So I'm thrilled that we have the opportunity to come together and learn together tonight. My name is Katie Gummel-Kaiwitz, and I'll be your MC for the event tonight, and I'd love to open us in prayer before introducing our first speaker for the evening. Please bow your heads and pray with me. Dear Lord, I thank you so much for this day. I thank you for your continued blessings. I pray that you would open our hearts and our minds to listen and to learn tonight. I thank you for being with every individual student and the way that you love all of them, their unique gifts, their unique talents. And I just pray that you would continue to speak through this college process and help guide us in wisdom. Amen. The first speaker for tonight is Colleen Murray. She is our Dean of College Advising here at the Bear Creek School, and she has helped over 1,500 students find their home in college after graduating from high school. She has an extensive background and pool of knowledge about the college process and colleges, and we are very excited and honored that we get to hear from her about really this college journey and what's involved in every step and stage of the college process. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to her.
Text me.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to.
Okay.
Yeah. Fix
Okay.
that.
Close that.
Close.
Go back.
Too many tabs open.
Go.
Decision letter.
Decision letter.
Oh! I've been admitted! Oh!
I got it!
Oh my god! Like immediately! Oh my god! Oh my god!
A little bit of excitement and emotion in this process indeed. As we well know, the college admissions process is filled with anticipation and emotion and excitement. And it's my joy as a college advisor to help guide our students and their families through their individual college process, a process that is indeed unique to each student. We live in a world that emphasizes the importance of a college education, and from the moment that students step into high school and maybe even earlier than high school, they're surrounded by college talk. it can be pretty easy to get wrapped up in the competitive outlook that can oftentimes cause a lot of uncertainty and angst. And tonight we would like to share some strategies on how best to navigate the process to manage your stress and to equip you in how to confidently embrace and love the college admissions journey. Next slide, please. When preparing for one's college journey, we are going to explore the various strategies and look at the different kinds of things that students actually have control of in the college process that can make it a very successful and enjoyable one and not an overly stressful process. We're going to learn how to embark on the process with an emphasis on the journey rather than the destination. I think it's important to keep a proper perspective for sure, and determining what one finds as his or her own deal breakers in the process and embracing a meaningful and authentic college search process. Next slide. So how do we know when to start? When is too soon? When is too late? We want to definitely take advantage of everything we have in front of us and everything that the Bear Creek School has to offer, and indeed not to be having tunnel vision on one particular path. This is the time, high school is the time to explore and to look at getting involved in many different activities and clubs and taking different kinds of classes that one might find interesting and that one wants to learn more about. I'm going to suggest that we not try to focus on the things that we think colleges want to see, but rather to become engaged in the activities that really mean something to you. Once we understand the myths and the misconceptions out there about the things that we think colleges want to see, or do colleges like this or that, we'll be freed to explore, to mature, to engage, and discover. It's a definite period of self-discovery. So we don't want to get too hung up on the name of a college, certainly. A college never defines us, and I would offer that you can define the college while you are attending it, and certainly after graduation as an alum. Next slide. As we know, there are many factors that come into a college admission decision, one of which is extracurricular activities that a student might choose to involve him or herself in. Colleges are looking for depth rather than breadth. So when we know that going into the process, we will not have any stress about becoming overly taxed or overly scheduled with participating in numerous activities that we might not have any authentic interest in. So when we're looking at choosing clubs or activities that we would participate in, we want to think about depth. We want to think about how I can make a pointed contribution, how I can have an impact on my school or my community by my involvement in that activity. So colleges do appreciate seeing depth in one or two activities over time. So if a student is involved in an activity for all 4 years of high school, that's fantastic, because certainly that person would have an opportunity to become deeply involved and engaged and make an impact. So if we can think back to how college admissions was when I first started in the mid-90s, the talk was the well-rounded students. The colleges want to see the well-rounded student, but I would like to offer a visual of an angular student, a more pointy student, if you will, a student who has engaged in a particular area, one or two over time, is the pointy student making impact and becoming deeply engaged. Indeed, you want to stay true to yourself And what's not to love about that? Because when you're getting involved in activities that are truly meaningful to you, you are going to have a blast and you are going to enjoy those. And they aren't going to be laborious or boring, or I don't want to go to that. Colleges are not going to be denying you, or admitting you for that matter, on the basis of any one extracurricular activity. Next slide. One of the most interesting pieces of information is a project out of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, the Making Caring Common project. And this is from the 2016 Turning the Tide statement piece that we're going to share with you after I speak to this a little bit. We're going to pop it into the chat for you to access later at your convenience. But this is a time in history where a broad coalition of colleges and admission offices have joined forces to encourage students in high school to focus on meaningful and ethical and intellectual engagement throughout their college admissions process. So it's all about promoting a more meaningful contribution to others, to one's community, and service and engagement. And that's an excellent read. And we want to have peace in knowing that the colleges are in this with us. We are in harmony as a high school with deep relationships with college admission officers that we have planted and watered over many years. And so when we're working with the college admission officers as advisors in the high school, advocating for the student, talking to the admission officers about our students, helping the student to shine, and helping the student to best position him or herself in the process, we know that caring counts in this piece. What's not to love about that? Meaning, colleges and universities are actually asking students on the application themselves, what kind of roommate will you be? You can read the Stanford essay prompt. Why would they want to know what kind of roommate I will be? Because they're building a freshman class. Every year, the colleges and universities are drawing from applicants from all over the world, building a freshman class. So they want to know how you will impact their community. What kind of person are you? That's where the wisdom, compassion, and courage comes in. Our students are highly sought after by the colleges and universities because of that caring, the character, the compassion, the goodwill toward others. This matters indeed. So we're not going to get too deep into the weeds on this tonight, but I just wanted to set the stage and set the table for you with that piece, because what's not to love about that? Next slide, please. If a student has an extracurricular activity such as playing the piano, he or she might choose to become involved in different aspects of service around being a pianist. He might or she might offer piano lessons, teach younger students how to play for concerts or chapel, working on difficulty level with the pieces that one chooses to perform, taking advantage of opportunities in the community outside in camps after COVID, certainly. And next slide. Other opportunities for a soccer player, for example. These are just some samples of students who have one or two activities that they're going to maintain over time. Perhaps a soccer player would join outside recs and clubs. Perhaps he or she might be a captain or a co-captain or a leader, volunteering outside with youth programs, teaching, giving, tutoring, coaching, all about giving back. Definitely that's the thread here. Next slide. Some students are voracious readers. This is huge. In the college admissions process, The colleges love to know who you are and what you're all about. I had a student one year at my former school ask me, Mrs. Murray, should I even put on my college application that I've read over 300 books just for kicks? And I said, are you kidding me? Absolutely. 100% you're putting that on your college app. That's amazing. So the students who are voracious readers might want to keep track of those things, talk to their teachers about adding additional reading material that will complement their class novels, perhaps, offering to work as a volunteer in the library, that sort of thing. Next slide. I think when we embark on this process with a positive and an I can do it attitude, I think when we're true to ourselves, we want to know for sure how we learn best. I think it's important for students to take a minute and to think about the things that might be important to him or her before worrying about whether he or she can be admitted to a certain institution. So if we start at the beginning and we think about how we learn best, perhaps you might like a small class experience where the average class size is 8 to 10, discussion-based classes, where the professor really knows your name and is a true mentor for you. Some students want to be thinking on, the type of atmosphere they need. I had a couple students years ago who said it's got to have football, or I don't even want to apply. It's got to be that raw D1 type of school, and so that's important for that particular student. We lost our PowerPoint there, but I have my notes with me, so okay, here we go. It's completely fine, absolutely, to change your mind along the way. I just want to put that out front because this is a time for exploring and changing your mind. And certainly a student from grade 9 is very different from a senior in the fall and from a senior in the spring. Seniors change a lot from the beginning of grade 12 to when they're making their college decisions and choosing which school they'd like to attend. So we want to allow ourselves the opportunity to change our mind. Think about what type of school you can see yourself in a city, a large school, a small school. You want to sort through your different values in order to begin that authentic search process. So the next slide will show you a few things that we had the opportunity to do. We can click on each link to show you some of the various values that we reviewed with our juniors in the past. We asked our juniors to think about various things in the college admissions criteria. For example, some students might have a particular academic program that they would like to participate in, and it's important that their college have that degree program. Others might want to stay in the state of Washington. Others might want a very large school. Some want a small school. Some are looking at a particular student body, reading and learning and understanding the mission and the vision of the institution itself. Some, as I said earlier, might need a particular sports program to be in place. What kinds of things do students do on the weekends for fun? How often may I access my professor? How easy is it to get my classes and to graduate within 4 years? So we asked the students in the junior year to start to envision themselves at their future college. So they looked at the 12 values, and then we asked them to select their top 6 values. And mind you, they're just thinking, they're just shopping, they're juniors, starting to think about the things that they love and what's important to them. And so once they determined the top 6, we asked them to draw a picture of themselves at their future college. And I asked them some questions while they were drawing pictures. And I have a few samples to share on the next slide. This is a student named Sam. This student, as you can see, has a keen interest in rowing. He was a rower, and he was very interested in obtaining scholarships. He had relatives in the Midwest and the East Coast, so he was looking at schools in that area. And so if you can see, he's got his visual going, he's got the lake there, he's rowing away. So when they're picturing themselves, I ask the students to think about, how did you get to campus today? Did you take a plane, a car, a trolley? When you picture yourself, are you in a city or the country? Is it suburban? When you're walking around the campus and you see your professor, does he or she know you and recognize you? Where do you live? Are you in an apartment off campus or the dormitories? Are you at home and commuting to school? And are you in a large stadium style seating classroom, or are you in a very small intimate classroom setting in a circle, you know, having discussion based classes? On the next slide, this young lady had a interest in having a Greek life at her campus. She definitely wanted to participate in the sorority scene. She wanted to look at a D1 rah-rah school. She might want to be a cheerleader there as part of her experience in college. And so, yeah, Sally was just looking at any and all schools that might have that. As you can see, she's got that downtown area. She wants things to do on the weekend. She's got the dorms that are clean, and she even pointed that out, so that's important to her. And you can see it looks like a pretty happy place to me. It looks a lot like Southern Methodist or University of Southern California to me. But next slide. So once the students start to think about the things that are important to them, we want to also be considerate of what the colleges are looking at. What are they looking at in a holistic review process? The holistic review process is simply one that involves many different factors. So SAT and ACT scores are not the biggest factor in a college admission decision, and they never were. And so when we look at, well, what do the colleges consider? We're looking at many different things. Students do have control to some degree on the strength of their curriculum in their high school experience. The courses that one chooses to take can have a bearing indeed. The essay he or she chooses to write, how well he or she writes the essay, and we'll hear from Mr. Norris on that in a little bit. The grades, certainly the grades in one's coursework, and the recommendation letters from the teachers, the college advisor, and demonstrated interest comes into play for some institutions, how much interest the student shows toward that college. Next slide. This is just a rough rendering I put together for you. The pieces of the pie are not hard objective data, certainly, but we want to give you a nice visual of the various things that come into play in a college admissions decision. Some students have phenomenal art portfolios, or they're going to audition as an artist in a visual and performing art program. Some might have special circumstances that they've overcome, particular hardships they've overcome. Some might be the first in their family to attend college. All of these things come into play in a college admission decision. And as mentioned, one thing or another is not more important, but certainly the grades one earns in his or her high school coursework remain at the top of the list. But we want to really take note of the holistic review. Next slide, please. The timeline is a very full court press in the junior year for the college admissions piece. That said, students may start visiting colleges once they're open again after the pandemic subsides. Students as young as 9th grade, 10th grade might wish to have virtual college visits. Our colleges and universities cannot wait to get to the Bear Creek School to meet with your students virtually. We have about 85 colleges and universities come to our school every fall, and this year they're doing that virtually. But outside of COVID, the students may take advantage of visiting colleges as early as 9th or 10th grade with family. When you're on a vacation, drive through a college and get out and walk around and just, while you have no pressure at all to make a decision about a college, you can have an appreciation for what things impressed you or what things you didn't like. Some of our best family memories are going on those college visits and making those drives and hearing the feedback of my daughters. I have 3 adult daughters, and those are my favorite memories of visiting, hearing what they thought and why about a college after a visit. The juniors meet for their college advising in the spring. They're going to be learning the protocol for obtaining recommendation letters. So you have wonderful teachers at the Bear Creek School writing glowing recommendation letters for the students. And what's not to love about that? So we begin those advising meetings in the spring right after Christmas break, and we focus together on building a college list. And it's all about a focus on best fit. So this is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. Next slide, please. So to be judicious, we develop a 3-tiered list of colleges in the junior year during that meeting time. This is in pencil. So we have room to grow, change our mind, discover what's really important, what we love, and what we're so excited about. And when developing the initial list, I always ask students to land on 2 or 3 colleges that we know he or she can be admitted to, and we do this together, that we know he or she can afford, and that we know he or she would be thrilled to attend. So once we have 2 or 3 likely to be admitted schools that the student would be super excited to attend, those foundational schools give us the piece in the process that we need as we embark on it. And certainly students will apply to other schools where the admit rate might be 8%, 4%. Those are the reach schools, schools that might be a little bit more narrow doorway. Certainly students will apply and cast a wide net. But as long as we look at it from that healthy stance of having those foundational schools at the outset, there's no stress here. Next slide, please. Students can do a number of things to enhance their chances of admission. Some like to involve themselves in outside activities, research, work experience, internship opportunities. Taking classes at the college level while in high school is something that students will take advantage of. If they're aiming at a highly selective college or university, that can certainly behoove them to take advantage of building a beautiful resume with extracurriculars and experiences outside in the community at large or within one's own high school. Next slide, please. The testing piece is, as you know, markedly changing and has changed as a result of COVID-19. 95% of the four-year colleges and universities are pivoting now, as we know, to moving into the test optional or test flexible or test blind admissions. That's for this year. So the current senior class has a lot of malleability in this testing piece. My best advice for any student going forward is to sit for the College Board examinations, and we roll out all of this information to you in perfect timing as to when and how to go about signing up for these things. But just as a general rule, for the purpose of this discussion, we want to share that a student may prepare for the SAT or the ACT. We don't have to prepare for both. We'll have a special event on February 24th around the testing piece at 8 o'clock in the morning if you're interested in joining us, and we'll go into depth the testing piece. But for now, if I were in high school in 11th or 10th or 9th grade, I would be planning to take those College Board examination in the spring of grade 11, the traditional time to pick those up. But again, we can talk about all of those things, including subject test exams, in depth. Next slide, please. Oh, interviews. Interviews are an optional piece. We have many seniors right now that I'm mock interviewing with as they are preparing to take their interview appointments with a college admissions officer or an alum from a college. So the kids are very excited right now, and we practice together, and this is an optional piece that students can take advantage of. It can certainly put the thumb on the scale. It's not the biggest piece, and it has diminished over time as far as importance, but I would say if I wanted to be admitted somewhere, I would take advantage of whatever I could in order to enhance my chances of admission and put the thumb on the scale. So I would take an interview. I would make an appointment for that. Next slide, please. The timelines vary for the institutions. Right now, as we speak, by the 15th of this month, we have our seniors applying under the early action round to their colleges and universities, and 98% of the senior class is applying under the early round. So things are moving and shaking in the college advising world, and it's very exciting. That means that students, if they have their essay polished, they have their application in order and it's pristine and they're ready to submit it, they may do so by the early action round. It is non-binding, meaning they don't have to attend the college if they're admitted. They can wait until May 1st, the national candidate reply date, to deposit to one school and make their decision at that time. But they do get to hear back from their college by Christmas break. So the early action round is very popular for students. Early decision is for the student who is telling the college, I'm ready to get married. You're it. I'm coming if you invite me. I will cancel all my other applications that I've cast if you invite me to come. Early decision is binding. So students, maybe 10% of the class will apply ED every year. It's a different app period, but just something for you to be aware of. Some colleges and universities, University of Southern California, Boston University, will offer the priority round by December 1st. If a student wants to be considered for large scholarship opportunities within an institution, they'll choose to go priority. Rolling admission is just that. The college will roll out an admission decision to the student within about 3 to 4 weeks of the student applying. And the regular decision round is just that, good old regular decision. That's all we ever had back in the day. But a student may apply in the January round under the regular decision. All right, next slide. The students definitely want to be taking the baton and running with it. This is the student's process. So it's essential that A student selects a course load carefully and not make those decisions lightly because he or she is doing the work and living the life. So that's an exciting part of the process, the course selection, and we work very hard to help our students and supporting you through that process and guiding you through that. You want to definitely make sure that you allow yourself the possibility of change. I think that's extremely important when you're, you're 16 or 17 years old. You get to change your mind. You don't have to know what you want to do for the rest of your life. You don't have to know what you want to major in. You might even get to college and change your major once you're there, and that's perfectly fine. All right, next slide. I think it's important to start early, and that's going to allow you to have a stress-free process indeed. So students that do start making visits online virtually to college fairs in grade 10 or 11 are ahead of the game. They have a good idea of what it is that they like or are seeking perhaps in a college of choice. Students want to definitely get a good handle on managing their time. That's a strategy that you'll learn to develop indeed over time. In completing the college applications, students will also offer an optional resume. I think that's just such a nice cherry on the top. And so we help students in developing a resume of their extracurricular activities to offer to their colleges and universities. And then, as we know, the essay is the student's chance to tell his or her story. And when we know that the colleges want to get to know you and they're interested in learning about who you are when you tell your story, what's not to love about that? They're building a freshman class, so they want to make sure that they're inviting the students that will help them to build the class they're looking to build. Sometimes the institution has its own goals, and we can't do anything about that. If they're looking for a tuba player from the Midwest, there's not a lot you can do about that. But there is a lot you can do and a lot that you have control over when you're casting your college application. So starting early and thinking on these things will position you quite well. Next slide, please. Oh gosh, the parents' role. We parents, boy, we love our students. We want the best for them, and rightly so. I think it's really important to help our child to find those best fit, best match schools. I think it's super important to encourage our children to not have tunnel vision on just one school. The healthiest thing is to be open to schools we may never have heard about. And that happens during the college advising time. If a student will tell me, gosh, I'm interested in this school, then I'll offer sister schools or other schools they might be interested in looking at in order to expand their horizons and expand their sphere and think and look at schools they might never have thought of. I think it's important also for parents to set any financial constraints, those expectations early on in the process rather than after the student is admitted to all of their schools, and also limit the college conversations per week. I think that's very healthy as well. And in our family, we only talked about college on Sundays after church. That was it. And so I never asked about college or talked about college at any other time. Next slide, please. We have numerous resources available to you here at the Bear Creek School. We have our website that contains wonderful documents and resources. We have video links on the testing piece that you can access on our website. Naviance is our web-based platform that's superb. It houses many valuable documents and informational pieces, and that's also where the students can see a list of the college admission officers that are coming to our school every year. We have drop-in office hours for seniors that begin in the summer, and I work with them throughout the month of December. They're dropping in and we're working on college applications together weekly. The essay writing support is a dedicated part of the junior year curriculum. It's quite special that Bear Creek incorporates the college application essay into the junior year English class. So it's not something that the student has to do above and on top of, but rather under the guide of the junior year English teacher, Mr. Norris. Will talk about this in a moment. The students will work on the Common App essay in the spring of grade 11, which is highly unusual. So a student will go off to summer break with a college essay in hand. So that's quite spectacular and wonderful support. And then, as you know, students are working in the senior year on their supplemental essays, and the English teachers are also supporting in that, and I work with students as we speak with their essay piece and reading and reviewing before they hit the submit button. So we have a lot of coordinated efforts on behalf of our students and the College Advising Office and the teachers here at Bear Creek. Next slide, please. Just some wonderful recommended reading pieces, wonderful books. The Colleges That Changed Lives is my favorite book in this admissions piece. So I would highly recommend Lauren Pope's book, and many wonderful resources and guides for parents and students out there. So if there's any questions that I can answer on recommended reading, I'm happy to share those for you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Colleen. I really appreciate it. That was fantastic. Every time I hear you speak about the college process, I learn something new, and I get excited about it and just learning about that journey. So thank you for speaking, and thank you for really stewarding that process with our students as well. And I have to admit to you all that I was so excited at the start. I forgot to mention our Q&A box. Some of you have found it, but if you have not already, then you are welcome to submit questions either about Colleen's presentation or upcoming about Kenny's. And then during the Q&A time, we'll make sure to publish those questions and answer them. So please feel free to submit anything that you'd like answered. But before we get to Q&A, we have a fantastic opportunity to hear from Kenny Norris, and he's going to share and really focus in on that college essay, which is a great opportunity for students to share about themselves and who they are. Kenny began teaching at Bear Creek in 2006. And in 2017, he was honored by Stanford University for an outstanding teacher tribute. We're so grateful to have him in our English department here at Bear Creek, and honored that he is sharing with us today his expertise and advice on that college essay writing process. So Kenny, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. As the parent of a junior, I have to admit that talking about college only on Sundays is pretty intimidating, since we get a mailer a day related to college. I think today's was Baylor. I'm going to take you through the college essay, but let's start with just kind of defining what a college entrance essay is. And college entrance essays tend to do one of two things, and I'm painting with really broad strokes here. They either ask you to talk about yourself, I call that the why you essay, or they ask you to talk about why you want to go to that college, kind of the why us essay. And I've got a couple of samples here. This one is from the Common App. The Common App right now consists of 7 different questions. And the 7th one, in my opinion, is kind of a cop-out, because they just allow you to write on anything you want to write about. But one of the questions ask you to recount an incident or time when you experienced failure. How did it affect you, and what lessons did you learn? So the Common App, very standard questions, versus the next slide. We have the University of Chicago. So it says, Alice falls down the rabbit hole, Milo drives through the toll booth, Dorothy's swept up in the tornado, Neo takes the red pill. Don't tell us about another world you've imagined, heard about, or created. Rather, tell us about its portal. Sure, some people think of the University of Chicago as a portal to their future, but please choose another portal to write about. The University of Chicago is notorious for having these kind of random prompts. My favorite one from them was literally, "Where's Waldo?" That was the prompt, and you had to respond to that. So that's kind of the breadth of things. The University of Washington, the next slide there is something a little bit more local in terms of what they're asking. Our families and communities often define us and our individual worlds. Community might refer to your cultural group, extended family, religious group, neighborhood or school, sports team or club, coworkers, etc. Describe the world you come from and how you, as a product of it, might add to the diversity of the University of Washington. And the reason I think this prompt is an important one to kind of use as a jumping off point is it gets at the central aspect of the college entrance essay, and that is uniqueness. You are trying to put yourself out there as this unique puzzle piece that will complete the puzzle that the university consists of. Next slide, please. So there are a bunch of different ways to approach this, and this list is really more about a person's individual strengths than it is the kind of thing where one size fits all. So they've got these 6 areas. These are what we call the rhetorical modes. So in AP Language and Composition at Bear Creek, we go through the rhetorical modes, and I found over the years of teaching that class that every one of us tends to specialize in a particular area. So if a student knows which of these 6 areas is kind of their go-to mode, I would always recommend that they write their essay in that mode. Now, the thing that's really hard about the college entrance essay when you're first writing it is it's difficult to write about ourselves. It feels like bragging. We don't do that in public when we first meet people. We don't tell the story of our life. It's just considered rude. So the thing that happens, and it can sometimes be comedic, is I'll give the prompt for the college entrance essay. For example, a key idea. I did this a couple of years ago, and one of my students really liked lizards. And so he wrote an essay just defining lizards. And the problem with that is it didn't say anything about himself. It was basically a Wikipedia entry or an encyclopedia entry about lizards. So as you go through these things, if you're telling a story, I hope it's obvious that you're yourself, or you're describing a scene that relates to something important or pivotal in your life, some kind of a verbal photograph that is pivotal in your life, especially as it relates to your uniqueness. And if you explain a process, like if you take the reader through a recipe, that going through that recipe would reveal your uniqueness, that you're not doing this thing just for its own sake. Same with defining a key idea with the lizards. You want to define the key idea because it reveals your college readiness, your uniqueness. Explain the causes and effects of an event or a change. This would be related to slightly different from telling a story because a story relies upon setting and rising action and conflict and climax, all of those elements that we turn to when we want to read a good story. And a cause effect is a little bit more clinical than that. It doesn't revolve around characters and conflict. And then recounting examples. This is, in my opinion, one of the more powerful ways to write the college entrance essay because the structure of it is so unique. When you recount examples, you actually start with a list of examples, and at the end, you kind of bring them to their point of critical mass and how it shows college readiness. So it shows you uniqueness not just in terms of the content, but also in the structure. And if you can position yourself uniquely in those 2 ways, to me, that is the epitome of a great college entrance essay. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm always a little bit because I work with a lot of overachievers, and they look at this list and they think, yep, I'm going to do all of this in my college entrance essay. And that would be a mistake. Really, you just pick one. And I know that we live in a world where when we go to the froyo shop, we can jet out all the froyo that we want, mix all the different flavors, and you just can't do that here. So you can talk about your personality, your abilities and talents, your struggles and recoveries. This is not, the college entrance essay isn't a time to confess unless that confession is, first of all, appropriate for your audience, and second of all, shows redemption. It shows your ability to recover, to find resources, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't look at this and be like, you know, I get to tell my deepest, darkest secret. It's not a in recovery idea. Responsibility, obviously that would relate to leadership, if there are any leadership roles. The past and the future. And working with students recently, especially essays outside of the Common App, a lot of colleges are asking students to really think about how they're going to solve real ones. And that's why that virtues. This might be a little bit different from abilities and talents. Obviously, we're big on wisdom, compassion, and courage as virtues, but there are a bunch of intellectual virtues that, like, we see in National Honor Society. So talking about those virtues, extracurricular activities, this in the sense that we all want to talk about sports that we were in, and those can get a little bit overdone. So I usually tell students to get away from I won this game or this happened to me in a sports event, for the same reason that my lights went off here. For the reason that when I played guitar, and I didn't write about guitar because everybody owns a guitar. I bet you have one in your closet right now. It's just too easy to kind of go down something that's too common. So we're always looking at this. And then, of course, volunteering. Volunteering for the sake of not just resume building, but volunteering because it shows passion. What you want to focus on if you're going to write about volunteering. Next slide, please. Okay, so there are definitely things. The application process will most likely ask you to put together a resume. So you don't need to have a list of accomplishments. Reading through a cost of accomplishments is really boring. And there is an entertainment factor here. So avoid the list of accomplishments. It will be represented somewhere else in your application. You don't want to duplicate information that's in other places of your application. You also have to watch out for things that are too intricate or awkward or personal to capture in a limited space. The most I've seen for a college entrance essay is 650 words. That's not as many words as you might actually like. And the thing that can be tough is we know all the details of our life, and so it's pretty easy for us to talk about our life, but outsiders don't know our lives. And so because they don't know our lives, a lot of times we have to include intricacies and personal anecdotes, and by the time we're done, we might have 1,000 words. So you really have to choose carefully that event so that it's not too intricate, awkward, or personal. And we can help you with that. Confessions without redemption or resolution, I basically talked about that. It's okay to get into things that show that you grew over time. I mean, they really want to see that. College is a time where you will grow, you'll make mistakes, and they want to show that kind of resiliency. They want you to show that kind of resiliency. And then watch out for the confusing explanations. Like I said, things tend to make sense in our own heads, but not to people we've never met. So if you're ever going to talk about something as an episode in your life, it doesn't speak for itself. You have to pick it apart. Next slide, please. So if we can only do one thing, we should do one of these things. And again, overachievers out there, you're not going to do all 5 of these. You can look at college readiness, whether that be that the complexity of your thinking skill, or the level at which you write or compute, things like that, college readiness, unique personality, that's that whole puzzle piece idea. If you are that tuba player from the Midwest that Colleen talked about, then you definitely want to be able to position that. Growth as an individual, okay to show that growth over time. I hope you're hearing that theme. The essay is not you positioning yourself as the perfect person. We all know that that's not real. And then passion for a subject area, especially if it's related to an intended major. So if you want to go into computer science and you've already written some programs or competitions, that's probably worth writing about. If you want to major in the clarinet, perform the side for money, or you've done it at your church or something like that, then you should probably and then, as I said earlier, potential to contribute to the future college or even the future. I mean, think of it this way. Colleges like it when people do great things and then in their bio it says that they went to that particular college. So if they recognize your future greatness, or if you can help them recognize your future greatness, that is an excellent way to position yourself in the essay. Next slide, please. Okay, so this gets at kind of the entertainment value. There shouldn't be at any point a time in which the reader is bored. They're not going to give your essay 15 minutes. They're going to give your essay about 5. So if they get lost, they're going to see that as a sign of a lack of college readiness because you lost them. Maybe you grew too redundant with your idea, or maybe there are gaps and things that make sense. So you've got to maintain that interest from beginning to end. And the college readiness by way of a sense of writing style, and thereby college readiness, is kind of the way that we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So if you can approach the essay in a unique, mature way with the writing style, that is kind of a backdoor through that college readiness. You want to be vivid in immersing them in an event or a scene. The way the English teachers talk about that is we say, show, don't tell. More practically, if you find yourself relying upon a lot of adjectives and adverbs to get at who you are, instead of really powerful nouns and verbs, then that would be a problem. The adjectives and adverbs tend to label, they tend to tell rather than to show. And that gets at things being memorable. If the college essay reader reads your essay and it stands out because of the story itself, they've never heard that story before, or they've heard that story but never told that way before, then that's definitely to your advantage. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do you make it memorable? By way of personal statements. They should leave the essay with a sense of who you are. And you could think of it this way. A lot of the other aspects of your application are kind of inert or neutral. They don't really give a sense of whether or not you've got a sense of humor, or you know, whether or not you're a night owl or an early bird, things like that. So they should get a sense of who you are. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? The college essay kind of gives that flavor, that personality to the rest of the application. It should, of course, have an original, unique beginning. First impressions are immensely important. So if there's one thing you should go back to again and again and again as you're writing this to make sure it's dialed in, is that original, unique beginning. And then a powerful ending. You don't want some kind of conclusion that just kind of peters out, that it's just really bland. You should build to a crescendo. It should end with a bang, as they say. And then a command of English to the point of style with your diction, syntax, and figurative language, which we're working on during the junior year here. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of brainstorming, what I would do with a list like this is I would start to think about events in my life, it's about me that relate to each of these areas. If determination, maybe I was struggling in math class, but I sought extra help and I worked extra hours. That would show determination. I might make a note there. Long-term commitment, maybe you've been training dogs for the blind for years and years. Diverse interests, maybe your athlete, but you also play the two leadership skills. You quite literally make a list of ways in which you've been a leader, and maybe that will bring about a story or some other way you could package the leadership skill rather than just list it. Initiative, that you're the kind of person, and the teacher asks a question, you jump in there, you take initiative. Or if you're in small group work, you're the person who keeps the group going. Would be related to determination. When you struggle, you know how to kind of tighten the belt and get through it. And then maturity would be the complexity of your ideas. So think through when you've read books and they've taken you to a point of greater depth. You might list that kind of thing in terms of your maturity. So again, this is brainstorming. Next slide, please. So I started all this off talking about uniqueness, where you'd put this list out, yourself, your ethnicity, your socioeconomic status, disadvantage, heritage, talents, and faith, service, leadership, friendships, accomplishments, mistakes, and failures. You literally want to start listing these things. And you know what I would do is then I would have your parents start listing things about you related to these areas. And then if you're comfortable with it, you know, maybe a sibling start listing things about you. Maybe have some friends list some things about you, because it'll draw out things about you that you might not have been aware of. I'll give you just a brief example from my life. So I grew up on a farm, and I didn't think anything of it. Years later, that when people find out that I showed dairy cows competitively, that's kind of weird. That's a weird heritage thing that I could have been essays for, and maybe it would have made me more competitive for essays or for colleges. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit of a caveat with this slide about writing the first sentence, seeds of ideas. Off of a seed sentence starting point, and then go back and erase it. Otherwise, it sounds a bit like a Mad Lib, and you don't want to write a college entrance essay that's a Mad Lib. So if you get stuck in this process, I would say grab one of these seeds in 30 minutes and see what happens. And you've got to be prepared, of course, to say that it's not, but this will get you out of that kind of rut that can happen with brainstorming, especially with the difficulty that comes from writing about ourselves. So these sentences are designed to force you to yourself, something that maybe you don't do a lot of. Next slide, please. Just a few more examples here of these seed sentences. And then I've got some places you can look at for additional resources on the next couple of slides. So Pete, if you could go through those just a little bit after each one, that'd be great. And again, looking at the view, these college, these people who actually do this for a living, you're going to get a sense of the fact that they want to hear your story. Again, they're looking for that uniqueness. So I thought we'd look at a couple of samples from some of my students in years past. You can go to the next slide there. In Kenya, two things that have probably never been connected in anyone's mind except mine. I've been working most of my life to be an excellent component in a hedge fund. It's a goal I've had, but I didn't realize what I was doing wrong until the students first. They've got some spelling errors because I just paste it as it is, and you errors. But the combination of money management in Kenya is kind of different. It's going to stand out, and so they draw that out, and then they set themselves up for a bit of a story about their time in Kenya. Next sample, please. I never thought that I would join the ranks of those wearing their suits to school on Friday afternoons. I never thought that I would be one of those people, arguing intellectual topics during lunch when I could be taking a nap. I never thought news articles would cease to be a chore, instead, perhaps, become a relaxing pastime. I never thought I would get such a thrill from joining the debate team. So this is a little bit of a different tactic for an opening paragraph. This is called the mystery opener, where we don't quite know what's being done. It also, though, is positioning this person to talk a lot about growth over time, because there's going to be this contrast from who they were and who they've become through the debate team, and that's what you want to do, to that kind of mistakes, failures, and then successes and learning and growing. And I think there's one more example after that. So this is an example of the example essay, where this is the very beginning of it. This is a student I had a couple of years ago who worked at a retirement home. And so what he did is he wrote the essay in such a way that there was a series of examples of him working with people in the food court. Mr. Marks with the heads cut off. I laughed and said, I don't know if the kitchen can do that, but I'll ask anyways. Whenever the restaurant was at its busiest, Diane pressed a particular multi-grain slice of bread all the way in the back of the kitchen. I would comply. Doris wanted a Dave's special sundae. While it takes a lot of time to layer the different flavors of ice cream, nuts, syrups, and whipped cream, it was a joy to craft it for her. So he goes on to have 3 or 4 more examples, and then as he wraps it up, he starts to draw meaning out of it and how it changed in perspective in him and taught him compassion. So it's just a little bit of a different way to package it, and it helps too that his experience itself was very unique. And that's it for me. So I think we're ready for the Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kenny. I appreciate all of your insights over the years, and those were some fun examples to end with. So I enjoyed being able to see some real examples there. So we have a few questions that have come in already, and if you all have a question that you haven't put in the Q&A box yet, then please feel free to do so during this time, and we'll get to those. Colleen, we got a few questions here about standardized testing, so I'm going to kind of sum them up together. But, you know, in light of COVID, you mentioned already sort of the pullback from standardized tests that some schools have done. Do you anticipate that being a lasting change, that schools become test optional? What does that sort of look like from the standpoint of the college process moving forwards outside of COVID?
What an excellent golden question that is. Indeed, the colleges are navigating this testing piece and are in the thick of determining their institutions' policies and procedures around testing for this year and for years to come. So that remains to be seen. Some are taking on a pilot program for this year and the next. Some colleges have completely abandoned testing, the University of California, Cal State University system, for example. Some colleges may go back to expecting tests, and I think that will not be the case. But just to be judicious and to be prepared, we want to plan for those when they do become available to us in grade 11 spring. I think that would be my best advice, because we don't know, and the colleges can't tell us because they don't know yet what they're going to be doing a year from now or 2 years from now, honestly.
Thank you, Colleen. That's helpful. We got another question here from maybe a parent of a younger student, maybe middle school or early high school, I don't know exactly, but asking about how should students really, you mentioned that idea of being angular. So how would you recommend that a student start to narrow in on their interests? What steps should they take to really decide where they want to spend their time in high school?
That's a great question. I think we need to allow ourselves the opportunity to try on many different shoes. And I would suggest doing the things that we love. And I actually had a student in 9th grade come up to me a couple years ago and say, Mrs. Murray, should I continue with soccer? My mom and dad really want me to continue playing soccer so that I keep with it all throughout my high school career because that looks good for college. And I said, well, okay, well, what do you enjoy doing? Do you enjoy soccer? And she goes, I hate it. I really do. I hate it. And I said, well, can you imagine if I said to her, well, you really need to keep soccer because the colleges and universities want to see you, stick with one thing over time. We don't want to be rigid. And I asked her, well, what do you love? What do you like to do? What are you into? And she said, I love art. It gets me really excited when I can paint and sculpt and draw. I love art and I want to take art classes. So that would be the appropriate guidance in that situation, is to encourage the student to follow through with things in that particular area of art and not go after an activity in high school because it might look good for college. I think that's the best advice I can offer. And so the question was, how does a student become angular? I think it just naturally happens when we grow into ourselves and we allow ourselves to discover what excites us. So certainly giving a lot of rope there and, hey, you know what, you want to join that club, and that's great. And then see what comes about as a result of dipping one's toe into the water. You know what I mean? We don't have to have it figured out. We don't have to have a roadmap when we're 14 years old or 13 years old, coming into high school, 15 years old, trying different things. That's what high school is. Pivoting and switching gears and changing our mind. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to hit home. It's okay to change your mind and try a different activity or take a different class. And it all comes in due time. And then by the time a student is an upperclassman or maybe a 10th grader, there's one activity that he or she is passionate about. And that's where the student starts to develop a deep involvement in that particular area, perhaps.
Thank you, Colleen. That's helpful. This next question is for you, Kenny, and it has to do a little bit more with maybe the logistical side of writing the college essay, but when would you recommend a student start working on that essay, and how should they go about sort of writing that, editing that, so that it's prepared when they have to submit their college applications?
Well, part of that's determined by the organizations that are releasing the exams. I believe the Common App isn't released until the middle of March, and a lot of the colleges don't release their essays until later than that. So it's a great thing to work on over the summer. It kind of depends too on the kind of experience they want to have their senior year. I mean, the students that put it off, their fall is going to be busy. That would be an understatement. It's basically like another class in terms of the number of essays. Students I've worked with outside of Bear Creek on essays, they write like 10 essays. And that's hours and hours and hours of time to kind of polish those up. And if you're doing that while you're taking a bunch of AP classes in the fall, that's a lot. So getting as much done as they can over the summer, I think, is the best choice.
Thank you, Kenny. That's great to know and remember that some of that is outside of control of the students, of course, when those common applications and essays are released. But as you all saw on Kenny's slide, there's lots of previous essay examples that are available and prompts, so that can always be good too to get you to start thinking about those things. Colleen, the next question I have is for you, and it's about volunteering opportunities. Do you have any recommendations for students that are interested in volunteering, where they might find resources on where to volunteer and how to go about that, if that's something they're passionate about?
Absolutely. We have a plethora of information on our Naviance homepage under the students account. We have volunteermatch.org. There are several virtual opportunities that students can tap into for volunteering in one's community or online during COVID-19 especially. So all of those links are offered on our Naviance platform.
Thank you, Colleen. This next question is for you as well, and it's about what you were talking about earlier with the early action versus early decision. So where can families that are looking for that information learn more about what it means for a school to be binding and non-binding? Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, and how do they find out if a school is binding or non-binding as well?
Great question. Absolutely. There are so many wonderful resources out there, it's overwhelming. I'm happy to answer any questions at any time about the college piece. Additionally, the college admission officers that represent their institution are wonderful resources for our students to access to get information about the admissions deadlines and criteria within their own institution. Certainly the college admission websites under the admissions page will indicate the timing one might apply under. The Fisk Guide to College Admissions, the Peterson's Guide to College Admissions, the Barron's Guide are excellent books that you can grab on Prime on Amazon. We have some as well if you would like to borrow them from school. So those are wonderful objective guidebooks that a student or parent would want to access. The Princeton Review also does has a nice guidebook that I really like. Just to hit on it quickly, the early action again is no harm, no foul, non-binding. A student who has his or her application ready to go by Halloween in grade 12 may cast an EA application. It might be due November 1 or November 15th. The early action, there's no limit. A student may apply to a number of the early action schools if he or she is in range at that time, as the application under the early action round will be reviewed with grades 9th through 11th on the transcript. So a student who might need to offer additional test scores in the fall of grade 12, or perhaps grades through fall of grade 12, may wish to cast an application in the January good old regular round, so that those pieces will be taken into consideration in the review process. If the student, and this is something we do together individually in this very pointed personalized process, determine when is best for the student to apply, early action or regular. Early decision, just to hit on it, is binding. So if a student decides that he or she wishes to apply ED, if admitted, the student is promising to attend regardless of the financial aid package offered, regardless of whether he or she wishes to wait to see if they are admitted to other schools and then notify that school. No, the student is signing something, the parent is signing something, the college advisor is signing something, indicating this contract has been reviewed and discussed, and the student understands this is a binding agreement that they'll attend if admitted under the ED. Few and far between apply ED. It can increase one's chances of admission, certainly, because you're promising on the front end, hey, no matter what, I'm coming if you invite me, and I'm going to cancel all my other applications. So that's 100% yield for the admission offices. And the admission offices are highly concerned with yield. They want to get that deposit check from you. They want you in the desk. They don't want to just invite students to come to their university. They want to invite students to come to their university that they think will actually accept their offer of admission and commit and come. That's yield. Very important to the college. So when we know that they're all about yield, and if we know that they take demonstrated interest, my interest that I'm demonstrating in you, college, into consideration, then that's where we have to learn how to play the game. And indeed, it is a game, this college admissions game. So there's a lot that comes into play in all of this.
Thank you, Colleen. I really appreciate that insight and going a little bit deeper into some of those terms that may be new for some families and some students. The next question, Kenny, is for you. And the question is, are there resources that a student can access to really discover and understand their writing style as they prepare to embark on this college essay journey?
The book that comes to mind is 3 a.m. Epiphanies, and it's a book of different writing exercises. There are a lot of different books like that. Writing style is really about instruction, of course. That's probably 10% of developing writing style, and 90% is just practice, 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 and finding what you like amongst the things that you're instructed to try.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thanks for that recommendation. This next question is for you, Colleen. We have a ninth grader here who's interested in engineering degrees. So what sort of activities would you recommend that they get involved in or think about getting involved in to really deepen that knowledge and show that interest to colleges as they continue through their high school career?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of wonderful STEM programs and activities that one can involve themselves in the community, within the high school and outside of the community as well. Clubs and organizations, definitely taking the advanced level math and physics classes that one is capable of taking within the high school, and anything with regard to tutoring or offering help to other students in those math and science areas are very helpful in showing giving back. I had a senior who participated in the Washington Aerospace Scholars Program. She just went off to Georgia Tech, and had a lot of volunteer work as well within her engineering area of interest. And I thought that was really spectacular that she spent not only her time advancing her own knowledge and her own career or her educational pursuits, but she also spent a great amount of time pouring into others.
Thank you, Colleen. Those are great recommendations and ideas. There's just a few more questions and we're almost out of time, so I'll try and get through as many as I can here. This is more of a logistical question about testing, Colleen, but if a student took an ACT or an SAT, let's say in 8th or excuse me, 9th or 10th grade, would that score be valid for college applications, or would you recommend students retake those tests as a 12th grade student?
Yes, if a student takes an SAT at any time or an ACT, that's perfectly permissible to send it on through the Educational Testing Service upon application to the college. So without knowing what the goal is, what the college is that we're aiming at right now, kind of flying without a net here. So I wouldn't recommend they retake it if they got a spectacular score already. Then they're finished, they're done. Yeah. Great question. So the student, the family has control over whether or not they send those scores with the almighty MasterCard or Visa to the colleges in grade 12.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Colleen. I wish we had more time. There are other questions that we did not get to, but please know that you're welcome to reach out to Colleen if you have questions. Naviance is another great resource, as she mentioned, so please do explore that, particularly for our current families who are on the call. Make sure that you check in with those resources. I'm just going to wrap up our evening here. I know that along with our current families, we also have some prospective families to Bear Creek on the call. So I want to just say thank you all for attending as well. And you may be thinking, gosh, we're going through a mini version of this process right now as we're looking at Bear Creek. If I haven't met you and you're a prospective family, I will make sure to put my email in the box there, the chat box, so you can see that. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about Bear Creek. We have such amazing educators here, and I'm grateful that you got to see a wonderful taste of that tonight from Colleen and Kenny. And I certainly thank them for their time. I imagine if we were in person, there would be very loud applause right now for both of them. So thank you, Kenny and Colleen, for your time and for sharing your wisdom with all of us here this evening. I did want to just remind you all as well that this Tools for Success is a series, and so we have another event coming up in January that might interest some of you. It's January 7th at 5:30 p.m. It will be a live event as well, just the way this one is. I guess live means different things. A live Teams event, so it will be remote, and it is on how to communicate in the teenage years. So if that topic is of interest to you as parents or you as students, then we would love to see you at that event. There'll be an opportunity to learn more and RSVP for that as well. I want to thank you all so much for your time this evening, and thank you for going along and learning along with us. And I certainly hope that you have a greater knowledge and appreciation and a greater love and excitement for this college journey. So have a great rest of your evening, and I hope to see you all in person sooner rather than later. Bye.